Oh, hello. Welcome back, everybody. CorgiXP here, and welcome back to our Command Block Academy series. Last episode, we went over a couple different things of how to do a custom dialogue using titles and telraws, using different types of things such as a hover event, click event, open a URL, stuff like that. And today we're actually going to be doing a custom boss. So we're going to be using what's called a boss bar as well as a timer loop in order to do different types of abilities that a boss can do. And I can show you how to track like the boss's health and stuff like that. So go ahead and grab your notebook, drop that subscribe, drop a like, join our Discord community, and let's get right on into it. So, when we want to create a custom boss, first we want to set up a boss bar. A boss bar allows us to, track the enemies or the boss's, health. So in order to set up a boss bar, we will type in /bossbar, and we need to first, add one. So we have the option of add. There's a couple of other things such as get, and that's going to get information of a boss bar. We have list, and that's going to show any boss bars that are currently active. Right now we don't have any. There is remove, which would remove a boss bar. So let's say you accidentally create one and you no longer need it, you can remove it. And then set has a different options that you can set for that boss bar. So for this portion, well, we're going to go ahead and click on add, and we're going to name it. So what you can do is the ID is essentially just what you want to call the boss bar in order to target it when you're doing specific things. So we can just go ahead and call the ID as boss, and for name you can use text component MBT format data if you want, so you could color it. You can do custom text, stuff like that, but for now we're just going to leave it as plain text. So whenever it's in plain text, you'd want the quotation marks, and let's go ahead and just call it boss for now. And as you can see, it's been created. However, we can't see anything. In order to see something or a boss bar, you need to add players to be able to actually see it, unless of course you set the visibility off. But default visibility is true. However, there's no players attached to that boss bar. So when we do /boss bar, you'll notice now we can do set, and you target the boss bar that you've created. So it's going to store it under the Minecraft namespace, name boss, or you can just type in boss. Either way, either one works. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different options now that we can actually set. So we can set the color. So for instance, we could set the color to, yellow, green, something like that. Max is going to be the max value of that boss bar. So let's say we set it to max 20. That means that boss bar is going to have 20 max of a value. So it'll count down, go up, whatever option you set to choose for that boss bar. Name just sets the name. Players, which we'll be using in a second, adds players to that boss bar. The style is you can change the notch style of it, or you can change it to progress bar. By default it's set as a progress bar, but you can set it to actually like notches, which is kind of neat, and I'll show you that momentarily. You can set the value. The value is a little bit different than max. Value just basically fills in the line of that boss bar. So for instance, if you set the max to 20 but you want to set the value to 10, you'll see that the boss bar goes halfway along the entire bar, because your max is 20 but you've only set the value to 10, so half. And then visible just means if you want it to be visible for any players that you've added. So for in this case, we need to do players, and since I'm the only one here, you can do at P or closest player. You can do at S because I'm the one running this command. You can do at A for all players. It really doesn't matter since I'm the only one here. We'll just go ahead and do A, because most likely you would want to see all players be able to see that boss bar, especially if they're in that boss area, or they're all playing like an adventure map together and you want them to all be able to see that boss's health. So we'll just do at A for now. And as you can see, we now have a boss at the top of our screen. Super neat. So let's go ahead and, set, a couple things. So let's go ahead and do boss bar again, and we can do set for boss. Let's go ahead and change the max. Let's go ahead and do 20 because I'll show you, what it looks like momentarily. So we'll set the max to 20. Let's go ahead and set the color. Let's do yellow, just so you can see what it looks like. And then let's set the, oh yeah, let me show you the style. So style, nope, not color style, it's style. There we go. And as you can see, there's different options. So notch 10, 12, 26. Let's just go with 20. And as you can see, there's 20 notches now on that. If you do notch 6, it'll be 6 notches. If you do notched 12, it'll be 12 notches, stuff like that. But let's go ahead and just put it back to progress, because honestly I kind of like the kind of flat bar. It looks a little bit better in my opinion. And let's go ahead and also change the name. So we can change the name to let's just do super zombie. And there we go. So now we have a boss bar super zombie. And as you can see, the name instead of boss, it's now a super zombie. And once we fill in the value of it, then it'll be yellow, or for the thing. So let's go ahead and quickly set something up. Let me get some grass real quick. Let me just set up a little area that we can spawn a zombie into, so you can see what's happening here. And I don't want our buddy to burn up, so we'll just do that real quick. And let's go ahead and right here we can just summon a zombie with the tag of boss. So summon a zombie, and we can do it where we're standing. And we'll set the MBT for tags to boss. So boss. So basically what this is doing is we're just summoning a zombie at our location with the tag of boss. As you can see, nothing is currently happening, because even though we've summoned our zombie, he's not attached to that specific boss bar. So how do we actually get that boss bar to show the health of our zombie? Well, with the handy dandy use of our command blocks, let's get a repeating one, we can get the value of the zombie's health as the boss bar value. So what we can do is execute store result onto the boss bar. So basically what this is doing is we're executing a store result. So we're storing the result into the boss bar, and I'll show you what we're storing actually into it. So boss bar, now we have to target which specific boss bar. So boss or Minecraft boss. And instead of max, we want the value. So we want value. And now we need to tell it what we want to set that value to. So we can do run data get, and this is where we now target that zombie entity. So the entity is E, and we can do tag equals boss. However, what you're going to notice is, again, since this selector allows for multiple entities, we can only get one because we're only finding the data of one specific entity. So in this situation, we need a limit of 1, and now everything looks good. And now we can do health. So what's going to happen now is we are executing a result, we're storing it to boss bar of boss, which is super zombie. We're setting the value to, we're running a data get of that entities, and we're getting the health of that entity. So I'm going to show you something real quick though. So we're going to set this to repeat, always active. And as you can see, we now have that yellow bar up at top. The only problem with this setup right now is, hold on, let me get a netherite axe, because I've tested this before, and using a weapon on this zombie that technically leaves like 0.33 whatever health remaining, the boss bar is going to look empty but the entity is going to be alive. So what I can show you real quick is data, get entity. Since I'm hovering over him, we can get the direct entities info, and I can do health just so you can see what it looks like. So currently we're at 20, and you notice how there's that F. That F means float, which is a float value. So the health is based on a decimal percentage. Whereas right now, the way we have it here right now, notice how there's an optional scale. That scale means, or it defaults to integer. So what's going to happen is if the health of the entity goes down past 1, it can't determine that float value. It's going to determine an integer, but it's going to round down. So it's going to think that the value is 0. So you're going to see the boss bar completely empty, but the mob or the zombie is going to still be alive. So after 1 hit, after 2 hits, notice how the boss bar is empty. However, if we now get their health, notice how it's 0.3199 blah blah blah. Because what's happening is, again, the health in this command block is scaling to a default value of an integer. And due to integers not being able to round based on a float value, it's rounding down. So it's showing 0 with the boss bar, but the zombie is still alive. So technically, if the zombie dies, you know, now we're fine, because obviously zombie is dead, 0 health. Oh, I used the wrong command. So now if we bring up another zombie with the tag of boss, it goes back up. So what can we do in this situation? Well, in this situation, we can set the scale. So if you set the scale by powers of 10, so for instance, 10, 100, 1,000, I would prefer just 10 because it makes it a little bit easier. What's going to happen is it's going to take that health value of that float and it's going to multiply it by 10 in order to give you a specific integer value now. So rather than it going down to 0, a 0.3 is going to turn into 3. So you're going to see a very small sliver of still, you know, health available in that boss bar. So let's go ahead and do that. And the only problem right now is this scale is checking by times 10. However, our boss bar is only set currently at 20. So it's going to go immediately to 0 if we were to attack the zombie right now. And we don't want that. So what we need to do is boss bar, set boss, max, and we have to do the same thing. So since we're using a power of 10 for health, we now need to make this, instead of 20, we need to make it 200. 20 times 10. So now what we can do is when we go attack the zombie, so 1, 2, as you can see, we now have that extra sliver of health, because if instead of it now going or rounding down to 0, it's actually quote unquote finding it as 3, even though technically the zombie's health is only 0.3. The scale and our max value is basically taking that 0.3 and timesing it by 10 in order to give us 3 health. So the boss bar actually looks like the, you know, boss is still alive. It just helps with immersion, and especially if you're running like an adventure map, I would definitely recommend using, you know, that type of scale. So now if we go ahead and kill our buddy, notice how the boss bar is now completely empty, because now it's at 0, boss doesn't exist. Perfect. So let's go ahead and show you how to set up a loop for that boss so different abilities, you know, can occur. And obviously we want to get the boss like a little bit more, you know, health too. So eventually we'll summon, you know, kind of a better zombie. But let's just do one more thing just so you guys can see like what the different other options are for the boss bar. So what we can do is, in that name, remember how we only set like a plain text? You can use text components to change like the actual color and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and redo our boss bar, and let's set the name to now. Let's go ahead and give it a let's do color, and let's do it red instead. And let's go ahead and give it text, because we want to keep the same text, but since we're now using a text component, we have to set it up like this, and we'll go ahead and do super zombie. So now what's going to happen is it's going to change to red, as well as that right there. But what you noticed is, see how we still have the yellow around here, because we still have the color of the boss bar set as yellow. So I mean, you could keep it like that, but if you want to keep like the same coloring, then we can just do, you know, boss bar set boss color red. So now everything is, you know, kind of the same color. Everything looks, you know, a little bit better, just to kind of keep everything, you know, the same, you know, setup. So now what we can do is let's go ahead and set up, you know, that loop. So in order to set up that loop, we need a scoreboard, and we've already set up a couple of scoreboards, you know, in this world, but let's go ahead and add another one. So scoreboard, objectives, add, and let's go ahead and call this boss loop. So boss loop, and this can just be a dummy one because we don't need any special, like, you know, properties or anything to be saved on it. We're literally just using it to track the timer while that boss is alive, so we can use dummy as that. So we've now created objective boss loop, and what we want to do is we need another repeating chain in order to tell what we want that boss to actually do throughout, you know, the amount of time we actually want it to run on. So actually, real quick, one thing I forgot to mention is on this one, what we actually want to do is, for this execute, before we actually do this store result, we want to check to make sure that the boss actually exists. So real quick, we can edit this to if entity at e tag equals boss. So now what it's doing is it's checking to make sure that there's actually a boss, you know, alive before it actually stores that value of that health. Otherwise, since, you know, nothing, you know, is there, or the boss doesn't exist, this repeat isn't going to trigger now. So it's just to help, like, clean things up a little bit. So let's go ahead and set up another repeat chain. And for this one, what we're going to be doing, same thing as the other one. So execute if entity at e tag equals boss. And what we want to do is run scoreboard players. And what we're doing is we're adding, and we can set a fake player to this. So let's just go ahead and do, oops, not that. Add loop boss 1. And what that's going to do is, as long as that boss is alive, it's going to just keep adding 1 to loop on the boss loop scoreboard. So let's make sure this is always active. And let's go ahead and scoreboard objectives, set display sidebar boss loop. So as you can see, nothing is happening right now because boss doesn't exist, which is exactly what we wanted. But first, before we actually bring a new one out, let's also go ahead and reset the loop based on the time we want it to run. So for this is going to be a chain always active. We don't need the same if entity exists because this is only going to run anyway based on that first repeat command block. So you don't need that first if entity portion. But what we want to do is match the score of the loop on the boss loop to a specific value based on what we want to actually happen. So let's go ahead and execute if score of loop, because that's who we're adding to that scoreboard, and their value on boss loop matches, let's do a 10-second timer just as an example. And what I normally do is, rather than specifically setting like 200, which would be exactly 10 seconds, what I would recommend is doing a 1 tick buffer, because like, let's say you decide that you want something to happen at like tick 199, it most likely will pick up at 200, but this just gives it like a little bit of an extra buffer, you know, just in case. So what I would recommend is adding 1 extra tick to whatever reset time you want. So this is going to be a 10-second timer. So basically what this is currently doing is execute if score loop on boss loop matches 201 or higher. And what we want to do is run scoreboard players, because we need to target the player, and we want to reset loop on boss loop. So what this is going to do is, when the timer on boss loop matches 201 or higher, reset the loop. So let's go ahead and keep this as is. And as you can see, is once we bring in our zombie again, there we go, boss. As you can see, the loop is going through, and once it reaches 201, it'll reset, and there we go. So loop is just keeps going up and up and up and up until it reaches 201, and then it resets that loop. So now we can add in other chain commands in order to give that boss special abilities. Before we do that real quick though, what we want to do is we want to ensure that the boss loop is always 0 if the boss doesn't exist. So in a final repeat block, we want to make sure that's always active as well. Is this time we want to execute unless entity E tag equals boss. So unless the boss doesn't exist, run scoreboard players reset loop on boss loop. So what this is going to do is, as long as the boss is dead, it's always going to keep loop off of boss loop, because we don't want it to run if our super zombie is killed. So 1, 2, boss loop's still going because zombie is still alive, but as soon as zombie dies, so let me wait for a second, there we go, boss loop now becomes empty because that entity does not exist. So unless it exists, do this. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and give it, you know, some abilities. Let's go ahead and do maybe 2.5 seconds in. So that would be 50. Let's go ahead and have it run, you know, let's have it summon a zombie minion or something like that. So what we can do is execute if score loop on boss loop. Same thing, matches. Let's go ahead and do 50. So we want it to match exactly 50. I mean, you could do a range. So what you could do is like, you know, 50 to, you know, 52, again, to give it like a little bit of a buffer. But let's just leave it as 50 for now. For this part, you don't need the buffers. I only do it at the beginning just to make sure, like, if your abilities overlap, just to give it that like little extra, you know, bit in there. But for anything in between, you're perfectly fine leaving it as a specific value. So let's go ahead and at E tag equals boss. So what this is going to do is, if the score for loop on boss loop matches 50 at that boss's location, so at that entity's location, we're going to run summon another zombie. Let's go ahead and have it summon, we'll just do one above its head because I don't want it to like spawn around. And let's give it a tag, so tags, and let's go ahead and call them, let's give it a minion of a tag. So what's going to happen now is at 50, it's going to summon a zombie with the tag of minion, one above its head. This is going to be a chain, always active, and you can leave all these as unconditional because it's still going to run, you know, no matter what. And you don't want this to be conditional because this would end up only running once this triggers, so you don't want that to happen until, you know, that, because it would be at 0 anyway and this wouldn't trigger, so you don't want that. So make sure these are all unconditional. And then we can also do a action bar title, which we mentioned previously last episode. So for this one, we can execute if score loop boss loop, again, matches 50. And what we can do is run title. For now, we can just do at A for all players. Action bar. Oops, would be nice if I could spell. So action bar, and let's go ahead and give it some text component data. So we'll do text of let's do the boss has summoned a minion, and we can color it. Let's give it a color of, I would say maybe yellow, just to make it a little bit easier, you know, to see. So let's go ahead and get this chain always active. So now let's go ahead and summon our boss real quick. And in 50, he just summoned another one. Boss has summoned a minion. Perfect. Let's go ahead and kill E tag equals boss. So the loop stops. And now we have 2 minions currently. And let's also kill off the minion. Perfect. So our ability of summoning a minion, and as you saw in the action bar, it said boss has summoned minion. Now the only problem is, though, as you can see above, our boss bar, not so good. So in our reset right here, we can do this chain, always active, boss bar, whoops, set boss value 0, and there we go. So now again, if we bring in our boss, that should not be, that should be conditional. There we go. So this one, that's why it wasn't working. So it was working originally because this was unconditional, so this was triggering the entire time. So with this being conditional, based on this one now, it'll keep that value. Perfect. Oh my god, that's a lot of minions. Let's go ahead and kill our boss. There we go. Now the boss bar is gone. Let's kill our minions. There we go. Perfect. Now we're good. And now let's go ahead and do so one more ability, just so you guys can see, you know, what it looks like. Let's do a let's do like an AoE type ability, which basically tells the player, let's do at like 150, let's say. It'll tell the player to watch out, you know, big AoE attack incoming, and then they'll have 10 ticks, let's say, you know, to move away. So actually, we might need one more because I want to do a sound too. Yeah, let's do a sound as well. So what we want to do is execute if score loop on boss loop matches 150. We'll do run. Actually, real quick before I do this, let's just copy this to make it easier. There we go. And we're going to first tell it another title on the action bar. So run title at A. We can do all players action bar, and let's go ahead and give it text. Let's have it say watch out, big AoE attack incoming in 10, actually no, in half a second. saying 10 ticks sounds kind of weird. And then we can go ahead and give it a color. Let's give it a color of red. Why not? Perfect. And then this is chain, always active. For this one, this is going to be, we'll do it at 160, so 10 ticks later, so that'll be half a second later. And we can do, for this one, let's do a particle, actually. We'll do a particle of explosion. We'll do it, let's do it, oh, we need to do this. So for this one, execute if score loop boss loop matches 160. We want this to be run at the boss. So at E tag equals boss. There we go. So we wanted to run at the actual boss. So let's copy this now so we can put it in the other ones. And at the boss, we're going to run a particle explosion. Let's do it. We can do it above its head by 1 for now, just so you can see what it looks like. And then we'll do 0.5, 0, 0.5, 0.1, and 20 maybe? Yeah, let's do that. Let's see how that looks. And then this is chain, always active. And then again at 160 at the boss, let's go ahead and run a play sound. What was I testing earlier? It was called like a generic explode thing. There it is. Minecraft entity generic explode. Let's do it on the master at A, so all players, and we'll just do it where the boss is. We'll do a volume of 20 and a pitch of 2. So chain, always active. And then for the final one, we can actually do the actual damage, you know, to the player, because it's an AoE based damage attack. So we can do run damage at A for all players within a distance of, let's do less than 5. And we have to set a limit of 1. So what this is going to do is going to check for all players in a distance of 5, and it's going to choose one of those players, and it's going to damage it by 4. Perfect. And this is going to be chain, always active. So now let's go ahead and resummon our boss real quick. And what will happen is minion will get the message that AoE is about to happen, and the AoE happens. Perfect. So everything works out perfectly well. Let's go ahead and kill our boss. Let's go ahead and kill our minions. And that, my friends, is how to do a super easy custom boss with commands. I hope you liked today's episode. I love command blocks. In our next episode, which is episode 9, we're just going to be kind of combining everything and preparing for our data pack series, and just showing you a couple of other, you know, fine little commands that you can kind of use to round out, you know, your entire command learning experience. I'm also going to introduce a map called Command Block Academy map, where you guys will actually be able to go into it and practice these commands and actually like do things with them on your own, so you can kind of learn as you go. Episode 10 is going to be our preparation of actually taking some of these commands and starting, you know, the first data pack and showing you how to actually start transitioning everything over. And then we're going to be doing some mini series or videos on this series where you guys can tell me different commands that you're looking for, and I will actually show you how to set that up as both a command setup if you don't want to do a data pack, as well as a data pack, so you have both options that you can do. So thank you all so much for today. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Drop that subscribe, drop that like, join our Discord server, Catch you next time.